Hello and welcome to the Nippon Wired podcast, the best place to learn about Japan. I am your host Filip Petrovic. In today's episode, I will be giving you a couple of tips for switching your job in Japan and a little bit of my backstory and how the last couple of months have looked for me since I was unemployed for maybe 2.5 months in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic. So, without any further ado, let's get into tip number one. So, you want to change your job, you had enough of your Eikaiwa or ALT or whatever job you're working as of now, and you have decided it's time for a change. So, how do you go about it? Well, number one tip is before you move anywhere, before you do anything, my number one tip is to prepare. And I cannot stress this enough, but interview for jobs, apply for jobs everywhere. We talked about the places you can do that before. Go to the interviews, do all of that. Give yourself a smooth transition. Don't just quit your job and move and hope to find something like you're still in your home country, because you're not. So that's tip number one. Try and find a job, land a job before you actually quit your job or before you even announce that you want to quit. And in this preparation tip, one more very important piece of advice is look for an apartment and preferably even find an apartment before you quit, because you're gonna have to have a place to live. So there's tons of places that offer apartments for foreigners, which are easier to move in if you are alone, because for single foreigners that are looking for apartments in Japan and they are unemployed, it's almost impossible to find a place unless it's exclusively for foreigners. There are a few companies that rent apartments to foreigners, so none of the Japanese landlords would give you an apartment even if you have a lot of savings and even if you have a lot of money in your bank account, simply because you are a foreigner and simply because you do not have a job. So they want to see your contract, pretty much, that you're a full-time employee. That being the case, again, if you have lots of stuff and furniture and whatever, you will also need to make a reservation or pay up front for a moving company or the higoshi gaisha. So you would tell them, okay, where do you want to move and how many things, how much stuff do you have, and you have to set the date and they will come, pick everything up and move it to your next location. So do that. And so how to do that? Well, while you're working, you're gonna have to do this in your free time, so it's gonna become a very, very taxing process, because if you're working in an eikaiwa, well, like I did, your hours will be long and you're gonna have to apply for jobs either before or after your shift, and then you're gonna also have to interview either before or after your shift or during weekends, and this could take a long time for some companies. So don't wait until you reach that breaking point, which is, oh, I cannot work this job anymore, I have to make a change. Start preparing before that, okay? 2 or 3 months ideally. So that's the tip number one. And also save some money. I mean, if you're gonna change an apartment, that's gonna cost you a lot of money. For example, there's a lot of things like key money and security money and all of these fees, changing the lock and yada yada yada. A lot of apartments just to get in will require about $2,500, and some places will ask you to give a couple of rents in advance. In my case, that was 6 rents in advance. So anyway, now I'm gonna give you a little bit of a backstory. So I was working in my place, and I was lucky enough to have a fiance that moved to another city, and she already had a place, and pretty much uh, in that regard, I was settled, and I already was landing a couple of interviews online, and I thought everything was going to go well, and I'm gonna move to a big city, and big city is great because there's many opportunities, so I'll find a job eventually, was my line of thinking. And little did I know, we were in the midst of coronavirus pandemic, and a lot of these places I was interviewing for where they were interviewing for potential positions. So I would pass all of these interviews, and they would tell me, "Okay, great, you got the job. As soon as we open, we will call you." And then 1 month would pass, and 2 months would pass. So again, I'm just trying to stress my point. Land the job first. So anyway, the next step you gotta do is you gotta write your letter to the company, letter of resignation, right? So usually some AKI was like mine was, will ask you for some pretty long, unrealistic release period. With my company was 3 months. So from the moment that I announced I wanted to quit, I had to stay another 3 months before they find a new teacher. And usually that would be stated in your contract. Now, the thing here is what they say in your contract is not necessarily what the law says. So if you do a little bit of digging, and in this case I will let you guys know, basically you have 2 weeks. So by law you are required to give your employer a notice of 2 weeks minimum, and everything on top of that is your goodwill and you being a good employee, or you being a gentleman or a gentlewoman, whatever. So you're obliged to stay for at least 2 weeks. That's by law. And you can scrape whatever is written in that contract. Yes, they will try to guilt you into staying and all of that stuff, but remember, you're responsible for yourself and you are your number one priority, and they can find other workers. Everybody's replaceable, right? So yeah, have that in mind. So back to me, what I did was I went in there. I didn't even write the letter. I just knocked on the door. I entered, and my boss was sitting right there. And I told him, like, look, this is the situation. My fiance got transferred to the city, and we're paying for 2 places right now. She's a full-time employee, and she has all the benefits. I do not with you, so one of us has to quit their job because we want to live together. And by doing the simple math, I decided that it's best for me to quit and move in with her. So I've arranged my moving, meaning my fiance got there with her car, and we packed all the stuff, and I moved. Which yeah, I was lucky enough to not have many things. So yeah, and then I started interviewing for tons of jobs, and because of the coronavirus pandemic, it lasted a very, very, very long time. So what I would recommend you to do is, as soon as you quit your job and move to a new place, find the local Hello Work office. So that's the tip number 2. Find a Hello Work office. And what this is basically service for foreign residents that would give you some training and also look for a job for you. You can use their platform to look for a job. It's basically like unemployment bureau for foreigners in Japan. So it's very, very important that you get your letter of resignation, and that you also get the certificate that you have resigned from your company. Without this, you pretty much cannot apply to Hello Work. And make sure to bring your pension booklet and all of that good stuff. So once you go there, it's pretty straightforward. You kind of register, and they give you your card, and then you can look for a job through their service. So it's very, very good. And the best thing about it is before you quit, if you pay into their system for, I believe, 3 months or 6 months, I'm not really sure. After that, you can claim unemployment benefits, which means after you quit your job, you can get some money every month while you're unemployed to kind of help you through the process of finding a job, which stands only for people who pay into the system prior to quitting. And I was not eligible because I didn't do my research, and I was a stupid boy. So anyway, go to Hello Work, go online, search through everything. Now, the biggest thing for me was this coronavirus pandemic, and I was landing interviews left and right and passing them, and doing all of this documentation, and it wasn't really so easy. But I was lucky enough to have my fiance and now my wife, and to have a place to stay pretty much. So to do a little recap, things that you absolutely must do, and these are the essentials. Pretty much look for a job before quitting your job. Give yourself that safe landing once you move. Tip number 2 would be get your documentation straight and apply to Hello Work. Number 3, if you really, really need to move and you have nobody, you have to pay for a moving company. That's gonna cost you about $1,000. So the moving in fees will cost you another 3,000, maybe more, depending on the apartment. So again, be prepared financially, set some money aside, all right? And yeah, make sure to leave on a good note as well, because many of these companies will ask for references from somebody of your ex-employers or some of the superiors that you've had, and they're going to ask questions about you, especially the Japanese companies. So yeah, also, if you're going to work for a Japanese company, please make sure that you have adequate wardrobe. And what does that mean? If you're a male, make sure to have at least 3 suits. So you gotta be professional looking. And if you're a lady, well, you can get by with much less money. It's much easier for women. So yeah, that's a very, very important thing. Now, to give you a little bit of a story, once I moved here, it took me maybe 2.5 months to find a new job, and I relied on my savings pretty much. I didn't want to allow my wife to pay for me, so I would chip in for half the apartment and everything from my savings. So that's a very expensive thing since we live in Osaka City, and I believe that for 2.5 months I spent about $3,000 just on living expenses, which includes the rent, the bills, the food, the taxes that I had to pay, and the address changes, and all of that stuff. So that's still not as much as you should expect if you're going to live by yourself, since we were splitting the costs of everything. So Japan is a very, very expensive place to live if you are alone and if you're unemployed. So I cannot stress the first point enough to actually find a job before moving, because even if you quit today and then the next week you're starting your new job, you're not gonna get paid until the following month. So again, it's you're gonna have this vacuum of space where you're not receiving money, and that's a big, big, big problem. All right. So one more thing: before you move from your current place, you have to go to the city hall, and you have to go there and say that you're moving out, to change your address, to say where you're going to live, to pay up all the pension and health insurance that you have to pay. That's all connected to the city. So pay off your health insurance. Say that you're moving, go to your local post office, let them know that you're changing your address, change the address on multiple things. That's your residence card, the Tsaryu card. Change the address on your driver's license. Change the address on your My Numbers card. And I believe there's one more thing, which is health insurance. So health insurance is going to be connected to your company. So once you quit your job, if you do not have the next job ready to go, you don't have health insurance. And what does that mean? That means that you have to pay 100% of your bills. Whatever you do, if you buy medicine, it's gonna be more expensive. If you go for a checkup, it's gonna be more expensive. So it's really, really, really expensive, because if you have insurance, you only pay for 30%. So again, I was lucky enough that I had a wife, and she was a full-time employee, and I could enter her health insurance through her company, which still we had to pay for it, but still her company would cover me because of our marital status. So that's one more thing to keep in mind. So to kind of wrap everything up, let's run through the tips one more time. So number 1, prepare yourself and get a job before you actually quit. Have money ready. Have a lot of savings. I would say have at least $6,000 that you can expect to spend in the next couple of months while looking for a job. Number 2, find an apartment where you're going to live. Maybe a guest house, maybe an apartment, maybe a shared space. Whatever it is, you have to be ready to live somewhere. Okay, because the Japanese government will not accept hotel as an address, not even as a temporary one. So yes, you gotta do that, and then go to the city hall, deal with all of these things, change your address, pay the rest of your health insurance, whatever that is, return the Hokkien card, and and then just go to Hello Work as soon as you move and start looking for a job very, very, very fast. Do not slack. Do not take some time off, because this is going to cost you dearly. So again, thank you very much for listening, guys. This is going to be it for today's episode. Tune in for the next one, and have a good one. Take care.